After a scheduled 3-hour layover in Atlanta, coupled with an additional unscheduled 45 minutes delay in takeoff, and after a long, cramped, and uncomfortable transatlantic flight with a mad rush through the Amsterdam airport in order to make my next connection, I finally arrived in Kiev, Ukraine, after noon on Saturday, July 6th. Because of the flight delay in Atlanta, however, my bags did not make it to Kiev until the next day. Taras Shevchenko was a 19th century Ukrainian poet, writer, artist, public and political figure, as well as folklorist and ethnographer, whose literary heritage is regarded to be the foundation of modern Ukrainian literature, and to a large extent, the modern Ukrainian language. He is also known for many masterpieces as a painter and an illustrator. Mikhailo Hrushevsky was a Ukrainian academician, politician, historian, and statesman, one of the most important figures of the Ukrainian national revival of the early 20th century. He was the country's greatest modern historian, foremost organizer of scholarship, leader of the pre-revolution Ukrainian national movement, head of Ukraine's 1917 to 1918 revolutionary parliament, and a leading cultural figure in Soviet Ukraine in the 1920s. He died under mysterious circumstances in 1934. Mykola Lashenko was a Ukrainian composer, pianist, conductor, and ethnic music expert who lived from 1842 till 1912. The Golden Gate of Kiev is one of the oldest edifices in the city, dating back to the 11th century reign of King Yaroslav the Wise. It was originally one of the many southern gates of the city, but later became the main entry point into Kiev. Yaroslav the Wise ordered a church built on top of the gate, and because of its golden dome, the gate was often afterwards referred to as the Golden Gate. It was the subject of the Great Gate of Kiev movement from Modest Mussorgsky's 19th century piano suite entitled Pictures at an Exhibition. This monument was erected in honor of a cat that belonged to the owner of a popular restaurant in Kiev that was destroyed in 1990 by a fire which, unfortunately, the cat did not survive. This surprisingly popular monument is dedicated to a character from a popular Soviet cartoon, The Hedgehog in the Fog, in which the hedgehog is surprised and scared when he meets a horse during his wandering in the fog. Perhaps that is why the monument was placed within sight of the statue of the horse and rider on the previous slide. I have read that since I was there, the hedgehog monument has been vandalized and at least temporarily removed. Khmelnytsky was a 17th century Cossack leader of a rebellion which turned into a Ukrainian war of liberation from Poland. The result of this successful rebellion was a union with Russia, sort of an out of the frying pan and into the fire situation, for which Khmelnytsky has been criticized by many, especially the poet Taras Shevchenko, whose monument was shown on an earlier slide. Despite the criticism, however, Khmelnytsky is considered to be a father of the nation. Just as we Christians gather for worship on Sunday mornings, so apparently do these members of a pagan cult in Kiev.
He got it.
These four people are considered key figures in the Christianization of Ukraine. They are the Apostle Andrew, who supposedly visited the area on one of his missionary journeys, two 9th century monks, brothers who helped develop an alphabet for the people so that the scriptures could be available to them, and a 10th century princess, who was the first Ukrainian ruler to be baptized. All are considered saints and equal as apostles of Christ. This monument, erected in 2001, honors the 1991 independence of Ukraine from the Soviet Union. The figure at the top is Bereginya, the Slavic goddess of protection of the home. This monument is as much a marker for the underground Globus shopping mall as it is a monument to peace. This is one of two monuments in Kiev dedicated to the legendary founders of the city, the brothers Kiev, Shek, and Korif, and their sister Lieben. This statue is an independent square in the center of the city. The Friendship Arch, constructed in 1982, is dedicated to the unification of Russia and Ukraine. I don't think there is much friendship left between the two countries now. Our visit to the Chernobyl Museum was a highlight of my entire trip. The Chernobyl disaster was a catastrophic nuclear accident that occurred on April 26, 1986, at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine, then officially the Ukrainian SSR, which was under the direct jurisdiction of the central authorities of the Soviet Union. An explosion and fire released large quantities of radioactive particles into the atmosphere, which spread over much of the western USSR and Europe. The Chernobyl disaster is widely considered to have been the worst nuclear power plant accident in history, and is one of only two classified as a Level 7 event, the maximum classification on the International Nuclear Event Scale. The other such event was the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster in Japan in 2011. The battle to contain the contamination and avert a greater catastrophe ultimately involved over 500,000 workers and a cost estimated at $500 million. 31 people died during the accident itself, and long-term effects such as cancer and deformities are still being accounted for. Alexei, a former operator at the plant who happened to be off duty the night of the incident, was fascinating, explaining to us in perfect English that the incident had happened because of a combination of operator errors, poor test procedure planning, and design flaws for the entire facility. He summed it up as human incompetence. From the site of a disaster caused by human incompetence, we then drove a short distance to the site of a disaster caused by human wickedness. Babi Yar is a ravine where a series of massacres were carried out by the Nazis during their campaign against the Soviet Union. The most notorious and best documented of these massacres took place on September 29th and 30th, 1941, when 33,771 Jews were killed in a single operation. The decision to kill all the Jews in Kiev was made by the military governor, and it was carried out by soldiers and SD and SS police battalions, all backed by the local police. The massacre was the largest single mass killing for which the Nazi regime and its collaborators were responsible during its campaign against the Soviet Union, and it is considered to be the largest single massacre in the history of the Holocaust to that particular date. Victims of other massacres at the site included thousands of Soviet prisoners of war, communists, gypsies, Ukrainian nationalists, and civilian hostages. It is estimated that between 100,000 and 150,000 lives were taken at Babi Yar during the German occupation. The bodies were simply thrown into the ravine. This mosaic inside St. Sophia's Cathedral in Kiev was created by a Ukrainian artist using 15,000 hand-painted wooden Easter eggs. It is an enlarged replication of the upper half face of the Virgin Mary from a 17th century icon. It weighs 2¾ tons and is entitled "Look into Eternity." This was the artist's first work in an effort to revive spirituality in the contemporary world. Her idea was to portray the gaze of the Mother of God, her eye on humanity, across the millennia. The Baptism of Russia monument is the oldest in Kiev. According to an old legend, the sons of Prince Vladimir were baptized in a nearby stream, and the site was considered sacred by the Orthodox Church. In the early 19th century, a stone chapel with a gold dome was constructed here. On the monument's pedestal were the words, "Dedicated to Saint Vladimir, the Enlightener of Russia." In the 20th century, Soviet officials ordered the chapel to be demolished, and soon everything but the archways were gone, along with the words about Vladimir. The monument was renamed with no reference to anything Christian. To celebrate the 1000th anniversary of baptism in Russia, in 1988, the monument was renovated and the cross was put back on the dome. The Monastery of the Caves is an historic Orthodox Christian monastery which is considered to be a preeminent center of Orthodox Christianity in Eastern Europe. This still active monastery was founded in 1051 AD and contains numerous architectural monuments ranging from bell towers to cathedrals to underground cave systems and to strong stone fortification walls. This sphere of good and spiritual renaissance was created by the same Ukrainian artist who designed the Look into Eternity mosaic in St. Sophia's Cathedral. It is made of 3,000 hand-painted wooden Easter eggs. This is the second of the two monuments in Kiev dedicated to the founders of the city. This monumental statue is a part of the Museum of the Great Patriotic War, World War II. The stainless steel statue stands 203 feet tall above the museum building, with the overall structure weighing 560 tons. The sword is 52 feet long and weighs 9 tons. The shield is 43 feet by 26 feet and contains the state emblem of the Soviet Union. The sword of the statue was cut because the tip of the sword was higher than the cross at the monastery. This 21-year-old Ukrainian Jewish girl was responsible for the deaths of many Nazis, including a high-ranking officer. Her father was shot at the ravine at Baba Yar, and in 1943, after her capture and 5 months of torture, she either died as a result of the torture in a Gestapo prison in Kiev or was also shot at Baba Yar. For 50 years after the war, even the Soviet Union refused to honor her because she was a Jew. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, she was finally recognized for her heroics as a resistance fighter and was posthumously honored in 2006 as an official heroine of the Ukraine. These carved reliefs and other sculptures at the museum depict the courageous defense of the Soviet border from the 1941 German invasion, terrors of the Nazi occupation, partisan struggle, devoted work on the home front, and the 1943 Battle of the Dnieper River.